Hey everyone, welcome to Tech Tip Talk. I'm Sarah Walworth.
I'm Christina McGrath, and we are Knitting Tech Editors.
Oh wait, shoot, I forgot
Intro.
about the intro. Hold on, gotta find
Intro.
it. So here on Tech Tip Talk, we answer your questions about tech editing, knitting design, and pattern writing. We invite you now to put any questions you have for us or for our guests into the chat, and we'll do our best to answer them.
So this month, we're so excited to be back. And this month, we are hosting Nicole Larkin-York, who we've been wanting to have on for a while. We've been enjoying watching her design journey. And Nicole has a really robust community online, as well as being a new knitting designer. And she is a self-proclaimed nerdy knitwear designer and encourages people to be their own hero in their story. And if you've read anything about her or heard her before, she's really inspiring and welcoming. So let's welcome her on, Sarah. Bring her in.
You want me to bring her in? Okay, here we go. And
Hello.
Hello. Hey, Nicole. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I'm so stoked. I'm so stoked to be here.
We're stoked to have you. This is really exciting because I think you are a new knitwear designer, but you also have a very niche audience. And I think we're pretty excited to be able to talk with you about all of the things that you are excited about too.
Yeah.
And thanks everyone for being here. Hi to
Hi,
everyone.
everybody. We get a bunch of
Hello.
comments. So everyone's here for you, Nicole. So let's start right at the beginning. That's what we like to do.
Good.
How did you get started working in the fiber arts industry?
Okay, so I am a very positive, person, right? But I will tell you right now that how I got it started in this industry is not so positive. So I'm going to give a trigger warning here for anyone. My journey started with some mental health struggles, and so just in case that's triggering for anyone, I want you to be aware that I am going to talk about that. So I basically got into the knitting industry when my life kind of fell apart. And I know that sounds really drastic and it sounds really dramatic, but it's true. And so by the time I started designing, I had spent at least 5 or 6 years in professional situations I should not have been in. My background is in cultural applied anthropology. So that means humanity and it means community and studying anything that could make us human in terms of our cultural backgrounds and everything that goes with that. So I have a master's of science in that degree, and I was so hell-bent on changing the world with it. And somehow I got stuck in a string of jobs that basically turned me into a glorified data manager. And I had a string of bosses that got increasingly more toxic and eventually domineering and abusive. And so it made me doubt everything about me. It made me doubt my very much, I call it Gimli energy. It's, small chance of success. What are we waiting for? Like run right in. It made me doubt everything that is really good about me. And so by the time I quit that job, I was diagnosed with OCD and generalized anxiety disorder. So, and those are two very big diagnoses, but they do tend to co-occur together. And I know when I say OCD, a lot of people probably think of the TV show Monk, which is obviously a Hollywoodized version of what a lot of people do experience with OCD. But my version, what I experience is very different, and it causes a lot of shame, and it causes a lot of people who suffer, who don't know that they do, to not go get treatment. And so my experience is essentially intrusive thoughts over and over and over on repeat. And they were terrible things that all led to the same end, which is I'm a bad person. I'm not good enough, stuff like that. It does make me emotional to think about it because so many really beautiful things came out of this, but it started really bad. And so I got lucky, right? I got treatment. And luckily I had a therapist who fully believed your brain doesn't just need to cope, it can heal and it can thrive. And you just have to believe it. And I'm not saying good thoughts only, good vibes only.
Right.
It was basically, you have to decide that you are going to get better. And so whatever treatment we go through, it will work. If you don't believe it, it will not work. And so luckily I had a therapist who could do that. And she told me basically, look for evidence contrary to the negative thoughts. Look for the evidence that you are worthy, that you are good enough. And I was so deep in it that I couldn't find any. So one day I had that come to Jesus talk, except sans Jesus, but a come to the light kind of talk with myself. And I truly mean this. This really happened. I visualized standing my ground and planting my proverbial flag in the ground and saying, enough, you will go no further. If I can't find the evidence, I'll make some myself. And that's how Common Thread was born. So
Wow. We are so incredibly grateful that you're willing to share that story with us.
I
And
think it's
so
really
proud of you.
I think it's really important because a lot of people, I hate crying. So I know a couple people are on here from my server and they're like, oh no, she's crying. She hates
I'm a
crying.
No, you
crier.
should cry.
You are in good company.
A big part of that healing is letting yourself cry. And, it's rough because so much good stuff has come out of this. But every time I think about where it started, it's pain. And so I designed my first design, which was the golden hall shawl, in the throes of that. And the reason that I did was because I was re-listening to the Two Towers from Lord of the Rings. And all of my favorite heroes come from either Lord of the Rings or what inspired Lord of the Rings. So Beowulf or Norse mythology. And so while trying to heal, I went back to those comforts, to those loves that I basically felt like I had to hide, right? I had to hide my nerdiness or else I wouldn't be palatable for people. Um, Thanks, Ellen. But I felt that I had to be palatable. But while I was hiding myself away, trying to heal from OCD, I didn't have to be palatable. I could be exactly who I wanted to be. And
Wonderful.
yeah, re-listened to Two Towers, and in King Theoden, I found someone struggling with an internal voice telling them terrible things. And granted, his was Saruman, so definitely a wizard, but he threw that voice out of his head, and he came back in the books. He came back very ready to avenge his people and avenge those wrongs. And in the movies, he had a little bit different, a little slower of a journey, a little bit more, I think, recognizable for me. But there was no better source of inspiration than that. And so that's how I designed my first shawl. And it really is basically just a tapestry of that journey to figuring out what peace looks like for me. So that's how I got into the industry, basically.
That is really inspiring.
That's
Thank you.
a big thing, I think, when you're struggling like that, is finding that like peace. And I
Yeah.
just want to say it's a difficult thing, like you said, and it's not something that people find easy to talk about. And you're giving a big gift to um crafters and people in your audience when you share that, for people who are not able to share that but can connect and feel that somebody is there who understands them. It's a big gift.
Thank
Big
you.
gift.
I hope.
It's a big gift to not hide.
Mhm.
Not hide who you are, but allow yourself to be everything and all of its nerdiness so that it allows us to all come into that too.
Yeah. And that's essentially, it's a huge part of my why, though you don't have to be, struggling with a mental health struggle, to find place and purpose in my why. I think even in our, everyday, fears, like if you fear public speaking, well, you can face it. Like it's not every fear we have has to be, this big, terrible, terrifying thing. It's just for me that is where it started. And so that's really why my tagline will always be, you're the hero you've been waiting for, because I had to become mine. And so I know that everyone can become theirs. And, that's what you're going to get out of my designs too. Every single design I have, there are no throwaways. They all do have that deep inspiration. They're coming from that place. I really use designing to try to reach those higher ideals that I know I believe in, and that sometimes I just need the reminder. And that's what knitting is for me. It's the reminder. So
That's
So,
awesome.
so that kind of already answers half of the next question we have is tell us about your unique approach and vision to your business. How do you
yeah.
take the shiro, like becoming your own
hmm
shiro, and morph that into, physical projects that people create?
So how I kind of morph that basically is what I think to myself, what would make me feel strong? And so thus far, it's been a lot of cables and it's been a lot of color work, but I've been working on a design that's a lot softer. It has some lace in the raglan. And so I think that's the question that I usually ask myself is, what am I currently afraid of? And what is the very opposite? What would I do instead? If fear was not a word I knew, what would I do instead? And that's usually how I decide what I'm going to do. And that's not just designing, it's with a lot of other things as well. But Rohan for me was very obvious when Rohan was my inspiration. It's cables, cables, and more cables. But it's really, sometimes it'll be looking at examples. So sometimes finding uh you know I'm thinking my Thorin design, I looked at the scales on his armor, that was part of it, but it's also asking what makes this person a hero to me. And sometimes it's not always what other people think. Like for me with Thorin, it was his redemption arc. It was, in the movies they gave him dragon sickness, right? It was that struggle, and usually it's the weakness that makes someone a hero to me, how they deal with it. So I think that those things, I come up with a couple of big words, and I try to figure out what does that look like in knitting for me. And so a lot of times strength will be cables. Cables to me are strong, they make me feel strong. Color work tends to be more play. Lace terrifies me. Anyone who watches my podcast will know that lace is like, I speak in cables and lace is like speaking like Sims gibberish to me. But that usually means it's softness for me. So I start there, and then I tend to really dig into exactly what it is I'm trying to do. So like, this is I'm No Man. I'm wearing my Aowen inspired design. This took me 7 reknits because I knew when it wasn't right, and I knew what I was trying to get to, and it's just trusting that journey. So that's how I approach turning actual my kind of beliefs and values into actual knitwear. But then there's the other side of what I do, which is community. And for me, the unique approach to that, it shouldn't be unique, but I think it might be. And it's operating through authenticity, which I know for a lot of people might not be safe. I know for a lot of people it's not an option for them, but it is an option for me to be exactly who I am in real life on the screen. And so what you see is what you get. Like, this isn't a persona. Like, you'll meet me, maybe at Rhinebeck one day, and I might be shorter than you're expecting, but that's usually about it. I don't know. People tell me they always are like, oh, I thought you were taller, usually looking down at my 5-foot self. So yes, I am only 5 feet tall. But anyway, this is usually, what you're going to get from me. And I'm really open about a lot of things. And that's because I want people to feel empowered. I either want them to feel empowered to make whatever they want. So if they want to make something that's trendy, good for you. If you want to shirk that trend, also good for you. If you want to make one of my shawls and do an epic cosplay in it, I'm so here for it. But if you want to make that shawl and wear it to work because you have a presentation that's been stressing you out and you just want that little bit of Aowen with you, then I'm here for that too. And so I want knitters to fully embody the beautiful, beautiful people that they are. And to me, the only way that gets done is through authenticity. And I know I've had people, very not well-meaning people, ask me, what good is that before? And
So much good.
because truly,
So much
I do know the pain of that disconnection. And I do know the pain of not embracing who you are. And I know the self-hate that comes with that. And when you feel that way, you're not going to speak up about things you believe in. You're not going to have the faith in yourself. And so my example is extreme, but I truly believe if we embrace ourselves and allow others to embrace themselves too, like give people the space to be fully who they are, then we show up as ourselves and we own that power. And then we end up using that agency and we end up acting on our values, and slowly but surely the world becomes a better place. So can knitting change the world?
100%.
Knitters can. So that's, yeah, it's all about authenticity and very much digging deep into purpose and intention and understanding why, basically.
Well, and by showing up that way, you're empowering the people who are listening to you and seeing you. I hope you're seeing the comments. That we've got some love over here for you in the comments. So I hope
I
you're
do.
seeing
I see some of them. Thanks, y'all.
them.
So
Um,
how do you foster confidence in your community practically? Like, what have you found? Like, how do you connect with your people to help them come into this wonderful self that they have, the nerdy person who loves to wrap themselves in AON? Like,
Yeah.
how do you do this practically?
So basically, and to put it in one sentence, I talk to people in my community the way I wish I would talk to myself. So I try my best to be for them the person that I feel like I always need. Um, and I hope that comes through. I hope it's successful. And by doing that, I feel like it enables my community members to do the same for other community members as well. So I do run a server on Discord, and I've heard some people have thoughts on, you know, online communities usually that they don't count. I'm like, well, then you're in the wrong community. That's what I have to say about that. And or that they're fan clubs, and that would actually make me incredibly uncomfortable. So my community is very much built by the people who are in it, and it wouldn't be what it is without them. So I like to speak and act in a way that I wish I would act and speak to myself. And so another way, you know, that I do that is through my newsletters. So because I do know, you know, my community is a paid server, and I do know that that can be a barrier for some people. And I totally respect that. And so my newsletters, I try to do the same thing in my newsletters as well. And so most of those newsletters come from, you know, a struggle I've had that week. And those newsletters that I write are how I end up speaking to myself and wish that I had been speaking to myself the whole time. So if I was feeling useless, you'll probably get a, you know, newsletter from me about, you know, work with your brain, don't work against it. If I'm feeling alone, you'll usually get a newsletter about the importance of connecting with community. You know, if I'm feeling stuck, you'll get a newsletter about go try something new. It's not as scary as you think it is. And so basically, oh, thank you. Someone reads my newsletters. Basically, I just feel like everybody needs a Leslie Nope. And I hope I can be other people's Leslie Nopes. And I do very much feel like that server is filled with Leslie Nopes. I mean, the hype team that is on that server is intense. And it's not for me, it's for everybody. So the other way that I build that confidence, or I try to build that confidence in my community, is we'll do things like we'll have make-alongs that will have a, you know, skill that some people have never tried, so giving them an excuse to do it, giving them the gentle push. And depending on how close we are, sometimes it can be a swift kick off the off, you know, the mountain, where it's like, I know you can do this, go fly, depending on how close we are. But also it's things like having a knitting help thread where members can ask questions and other members might answer. And so really, I think that confidence is built knowing that it's a server I built literally, but like, so the whole, like the channels, I put them there, but the community itself is built by everybody who is on it. And I know that there are a couple of you guys watching right now, and y'all are my reason for waking up in the morning. And it wouldn't be what it is without you. So truly, just love y'all so much. I can't even. I'm gonna start like quoting Leslie Knope now if you don't stop me. So,
I wanted to say, so you, well, maybe I'll wait, but you first wrote to us several months ago, and we wanted to talk with you a little bit about what it's been like being a new designer. And I feel like even in those months since we first talked with you and now, there's changes for you. So what has your experience been navigating our industry as a new designer?
Okay, so my experience has been overwhelmingly good. That I will put the caveat in there of, again, I am all about community, so I'm very much about surrounding myself with the right people and making sure I am the right person for them as well. So I do know that not everybody has the same experience as me for a multitude of reasons. So I'm gonna start with the only like meh bad thing in my experience, which has nothing to do with anything anyone has done in particular, but instead is about our tendency to compare ourselves to everyone.
Yes.
And yes, so when I first started, I was looking at all of the wonderful artists and designers that are in our industry, and of course thinking, there's no way. What am I doing here? Like, what am I doing here? Like, it just like wanted a Homer Simpson into the bushes. Like, never mind. So, I just remember thinking I will never be like them. And then when it finally clicked, like, duh, you shouldn't. You should be like you. Like, aspiring to a certain level of success is one thing, but there's multiple roads to success, and there's a lot of different definitions of what success looks like. But it was rough getting there at first. And once I did get there, I got there by joining a community that already existed. I joined the Fiber Business Collective and was able to. I think I spent a solid year on the Fiber Business Collective Slack without saying a freaking word. Like, I was just like,
Seriously? How
I
can
was
you
so
not say anything? That place is busy.
the group. Well, I was like, seriously, it was like that part in Doctor Who where David Tennant was like looking over the, looking over the side wall at people. I was just creeping. Like, basically, I felt like I didn't know enough to open my mouth, which I assuming that by now that must be surprising to everybody listening. Like, she shuts up. I know, but what I did finally, bust in like the Kool-Aid man, which I did. I was just like, hello, I'm here. I'm not going to stop now. Once I did that, I was able to get some really good advice from a member there where, she told me, and this was something she tells a lot of people, unfollow or mute people and stop looking at Hot Right Now. And so that's exactly what I did. I did, social media detox. And again, it was nothing that the designers themselves were doing. There was nothing. They were doing nothing wrong. It's just, it was really difficult to hear my own voice when it was developing, when I was looking at works of freaking art from other people. So that was the one bad thing, basically, my one bad experience, which really just came down to me. But the rest of my experience has been excellent. And don't tell me if you're getting sick of this word, but it really comes down to community for me every time.
Absolutely.
And so,
And that's something that we promote a lot is community over competition.
yeah,
Competition just results in envy and hatred and self-bitterness and all kinds of negative feelings. And I love your truth that you came up with. You can't be other people.
no,
You can't. So why not just embrace yourself?
Well, and
yeah,
doing that comparing doesn't produce good work, and it
Doesn't.
doesn't foster like good relationships. And it's a lot about relationships, this work.
it
Mhm.
is. It really is. And
So
usually, if I find myself being, feeling some type of way, basically, if I see someone's work and I feel comparative, or I feel like we're doing similar stuff, and so that deeply ingrained in us, very capitalistic, like overcome competition. Like, that's usually my signal that you should go ask them to be your friend. That's usually because that means that there's something about them. You're seeing you in
that
something
you're
about
connected to. That's great advice.
I
That's
love
yeah.
great.
that.
It doesn't always work because not everybody feels that way. Sometimes they look at me like this, and I'm like, okay, well, I tried. So worst thing that someone can do is tell you no, and or just not respond. But when I started to think that way, it's when my experience became overwhelmingly positive, especially just because, again, where I started was a really dark place, and I just had to tell myself, you're never going to feel brave enough. You just need to do it scared and reach out. And I did. And the number of people that it felt like literally took my hand was astounding. So I created the community that I'm facilitating, but also dropping into a professional community that already existed. And then finally feeling like I can ask a question. No one's going to think I'm dumb. Even if they do, that says a lot about them. It says nothing about me. You're allowed to not know things. And when I finally did, the number of professional designers, some of them who I had to mute because I was comparing myself to, because I was so like impressed by them, who actually answered, was just very overwhelming in a positive way. And some of them I was really starstruck by the people who were answering me, and they were so kind and they were so generous with their time. From anything from answering a goofy question like, do I need short rows if I did a V-neck? Like, no, but I didn't know that. So I asked.
Right.
And, somebody answered. I mean, short rows like the raise the back neck. Short, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
One of those. Let's not do that.
And
But
I'm
anyway,
sure there's someone in our audience right now going, really? You don't?
There's a lot of
yeah,
misunderstanding about this
Yes.
raising the back neck situation. Yeah.
yeah. Which yes.
Oh,
And so just the generosity of them just answering instead of being like, well, duh, no, like they just answered. Or, I remember asking, I have this set of values and I would really like to be able to build them into my business, but I don't know how to go about doing that. And one of the members of this collective literally sent me her business plan and how she does it. And I was just floored. And so, it's been a really good experience for me because I feel very much supported and part of a community, but that comes with a caveat of you have to be very intentional about how you find that community and how you build that community. And that I do know that that's not everyone's experience. So,
mhm.
um,
So, if you were going to speak to someone who decided today, hey, I want to be a knitwear designer, what advice would you give them?
I usually give two different courses of advice depending on, and I tell them this is two different ways to go about it, and you do you, boo. So the first one is, have you modified anything before? Like, what have you tried like to just design your own shawl before? Like, are you thinking you're just gonna jump in and start this as a small business? If so, more power to you. That's exactly what I did, but there are some hurdles there. So depending on which way you're going to go about it, whether you're going to be a little more planning ahead, a little more analytical, probably a little more responsible than I am, then there's a completely different course of action. But for me being me, and if I was going to give advice to someone like me, it's usually if you're going to jump in and you're just going to go for it, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Like, do not be afraid to ask questions and find that community who's willing to share and ask and ask and ask. And again, I said I'm part of the Fiber Business Collective. I know there's designer collectives on their own. I know there are different business coaches, and there's multiple resources. Find them and ask them questions, and don't be afraid to not know things. We can't know everything. Like, not we are not all, the character from Game of Thrones who drinks and knows things. Like, we're not. It's allowed, and you're allowed to have those questions and ask them. And if somehow, some way you do manage to ask the one person who is going to treat you like a jerk, that's them. That's not you. It has nothing to do with you. So that's the first one: is don't be afraid to ask questions. Ask them, and my mentality was prepare to get sick of me, and I got really annoying, and I just asked all the questions. And the other piece of advice is invest in your education and understand that that's an investment in yourself, and
Yes.
whether that's investing time or money. I know that it will cost money, and that can be a huge barrier, and it can be stressful, and I do understand that, but not I'm not saying buy every single course that comes across your eyes. Really think critically about your skills and think critically about your growth points, basically, and take courses on the growth points. And
Define a growth point. Tell us what that means for you.
Yeah.
a growth point is what some people would call weaknesses. So for me, it was grading. It's math. It's numbers. I'm a knitwear designer who sucks at math. Like, ugh. But I found Julie's what is it, pattern grading boot camp.
Mhm.
And the sticker price on it was a big price for me. But first of all, Julie deserves to get paid for teaching, number one. And number
She's
two,
good at what she does.
very good at what she does, and that's a skill that she has, and she deserves to be paid to share it. And not only that, it was a 6-week course, and you had homework that she would look at, and it's an investment in growing, basically, is how I thought about it. So for me, I did the grading boot camp. The Fiber Business Collective was not so much a growth point, but you know, I knew it came with like a marketing course. I knew it came with coaching and all that jazz. And so I knew this is going to cost me money, but it's an investment in me and it's an investment in my education. And I am very, very privileged and I have the ability to do that. So I did. Basically, that's my other tagline. I thought it, so I did. But for people who that is a big hurdle. Some people may be willing to skill swap instead of charge money. You know, there are. I'm one of them. So, you know, if you have a question about, you know, designing or becoming a new designer, you can hop in my DMs. I'm not going to sit here and be like $5 before I answer, please. Like it's we can chat. It's okay. And of course, y'all are an insanely good resource. I've been watching this podcast since the very beginning. And I was doing a lot of that. Wait, short rows with V-necks, what? Like a lot of that stuff. I was, you know, trying to figure out the question to ask that would answer the question I actually had. And watching your podcast was huge. And I have your book now, and I wish I had it 2 years ago.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's why we wrote it. We wanted to be able to pass that book on. Like, we need a book to give to people. So
yeah, and it was fantastic. And then my last piece of advice, and this is for designers, is find a good for you tech editor. There are great tech editors, but they need to be good for you. So I have had 2 tech editors who were both excellent for me. And I will do certain projects, you know, depending on which project it is. I'll work with one or I'll work with the other, which I have been told is not abnormal to have more than one tech editor. So that's, you know, also
it's even better sometimes when the tech editors can talk to each other over your project.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's kind of cool too when you need it.
Yeah, I won't work with 2 tech editors on one project, but depending on what the project is, I'll go to Ellen of Knit How for, you know, garments, and then Heather from Crafty Ferret, I might go for a shawl or for hats. So those are 2 tech editors I use who are fantastic, and they are both very good for me tech editors because they're excellent at what I'm not excellent at. So they are excellent at the very detailed numbers, double checking the grading, which I don't do my own grading. My husband does my grading. So because I know if I grade that, you're gonna get a sweater that makes you look like the, you know, Marshmallow Man and Ghostbusters. If I do it, nobody needs that negativity. And a lot of times, if your tech editor is a good for you tech editor, they can answer a lot of your questions. I know Heather from Crafty Ferret, she literally would send me voice memos to answer questions I sent her. Ellen from Knit How, she has spent hours with me, you know, on video calls. We're about to be neighbors. She's gonna get real sick of me.
I love it.
Yeah, we're gonna be walking.
I know, it's so great.
So
you can do it in person over coffee.
yeah, but I think a lot of new designers would have questions about fit, size charts, grading practices. I mean, your tech editor can help point you in the right direction. And so find a good tech editor, but a good for you tech editor is really important too.
That's an excellent piece of advice and something we said all the time because that's who we are. We're tech editors. So that's wonderful for you to put it, like, find the tech editor for you. Which can take some time, right? It doesn't have, sometimes you've got to go through a few.
You got to try people on, you know, not everyone's going to be your lid for your pot, you know?
Yeah.
And who's going to be, what I have lately been talking about with a lot of our colleagues is they need someone who could be on a team with them. And it sounds like you've built a team.
Yeah. I mean, I can sit here and tell you right now, like Ellen, poor Ellen, she's basically been a moderator.
She's here.
Yeah, she is here. She's basically been a moderator in my first garment test knit. I did not mean for that to happen, but she test knit it. So she didn't grade the garment. She tech edited the garment, and then she decided to test knit it. And so, you know, Ellen, I hope you're okay being on my team, man, because you are. So
well, and that's what makes editors tick, is when we can be that cheerleader, that support system, and there's that interaction where you're working together on something to solve the problems. What makes us editors, like, we're over the moon. That's our genius zone.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I think we've talked about this before in previous interviews from before, but I mean, Tech Tip Talks way in the beginning, but like, the best clients are ones who make you a better tech editor. And I think that they'll say the same, that my tech editor makes me a better designer. And that kind of um, collaboration in the roles is really exciting,
Yeah.
and gets
Yeah.
you a better end result, right?
Yes, it does. It does. It absolutely does. So
Hey, Sophie has a question in the comments. Let's toss
see.
this
Yeah,
up
let's
here.
talk
You
about
ready?
this.
Here it is.
Yep.
How do you organize your day to day? Meaning, how do you figure out what you need to do today to keep up with an knitwear design business? This is a great question, Sophie. Thanks for
Yeah.
asking.
So let's just remember I'm neurospicy. So what I do is probably gonna look a little nuts to someone who's not neurospicy, but I will make a gigantic list. So for the next month, these are the things I know that I have coming up. They're the things that I know I want to work on. And then I have these productivity cards, because if I write it in a planner, the second I close that planner, the planner's gone. If it's
Mhm.
out of sight, it is so out of mind. It would be shocking to me that it was ever in the mind to begin with. So I have these cards in a stand that's seriously right behind my computer, and it's top 3 things. It's that you must get done. Here's the main thing you must get done. 3 things to get done after that, and so that's literally how I go about doing it, or not literally, but it's it's the actual action I take. But I am actually just starting to really find my footing in terms of understanding seasonality in knitting, in terms of really getting an idea of how long testing will take, formatting and all that jazz. I mean, I have very long test windows on purpose. I believe my I'm No Man garment was at least 14, if not 16 weeks. I'm also a very flexible designer when it comes to test knits. If people need a little more time, guess what? I'm not publishing this the day after the test knit ends. So if I get a couple more weeks to work on it, why shouldn't you? So I'm still learning a lot of this timeline stuff. But what I have found works is I come up with a big plan. So I'll think about my entire quarter, and I'll think about what I want to get done. And we're talking like 2 quarters away, not this
Mhm.
quarter. Like this quarter should have been planned 2 quarters ago. So right now, I'm just my butt's flapping in the wind for this one, but I'm planning for the next 2 as we speak, and thinking about what steps exactly come into that. I said previously that my husband does my grading, so my husband is actually my business partner, and like honest to God business partner, not just a cute thing to say. And I'm very lucky in that he is in the tech industry. And so he has kind of really showed me how they approach their project management. And
Mhm.
so I'll have film podcast, and then he'll say, okay, what's after that? So you have film podcast. What does that mean? Does it mean setting up your camera, turning the camera? Like you have to literally go through every single step. And so I'll come up with a big overarching, idea of what I want to get done. Then I'll go through the singular projects, and then I'll break those projects down. And that's how I basically end up planning my days. And so for me, you start really, really big and you whittle down, whittle down, whittle down. But again, I'm lucky because I have a partner. And also being nice to myself that knitting is work too. So understanding that sometimes your work day is going to be knitting, and that's that. But I hope that answered your question. And also like making sure I need to look at my numbers is like sticky note I constantly have up. Like go look at the actual numbers of what you're doing. So that's the
Love
thing I
that.
skip every time. But I hope that
Thank you
answers.
for sharing that.
Yeah.
That's an excellent approach, and I love that you're learning from other people. Like, what do they do in other industries? I feel like there's so much in the knitting industry because we deal a lot with hand making that we
Yeah.
think like tech industry wouldn't apply to us
Oh yeah.
or fashion industry wouldn't apply, but actually there's so much we can glean from how other industries do things. Like a simple thing I found out from one of my students was a nuclear engineer, and when
Hmm.
she would work through a pattern, she'd
Hmm.
circle where she was at,
Hmm.
and then when she was done, she'd cross it off. She goes, well, "This is what we do in engineering." I'm like, "How did we not think about that before? Like, circle it when you're working on it." It's like
Yeah.
it's so simple.
Yeah, and I do wonder sometimes if part of that comes from, and this is probably me projecting, right? But how much of it comes from we couldn't possibly learn from the tech industry that's a real industry, instead of
Oh,
our own devaluation of what we do.
Yeah.
Because when I look at what my husband does, I mean, my husband, he's not in IT. He is building databases. He's doing math all day. That's what he does. And if I walk into what he's doing, it basically looks like pattern editing, but in gobbledygook. So, because it's and he has an entire team, and they also have an F up button, which cracks me up. So like their mentality towards bugs or mistakes is very much, they will inevitably happen, so just hit the F up button, whoever wrote it will get pinged and they'll go fix it. It's not a big deal.
Love it.
Yeah, but they are also building a product, and depending on how you pick and choose what hand by hand means, they are doing something similar. It's just they're doing it and the product is popping up on your computer, and ours we're putting on our bodies. So the tech industry especially, we can learn a lot from how they operate, especially the ethical ones, but let's not get into that.
Victoria makes a really good point. Knitting is basically the same as programming. Seriously, it's all just instructions and syntax, and absolutely 100%.
100%. And when I was working on the cardigan version of this design, and I had a whole design plan, and my husband just kind of glanced at it. I didn't hand it to him or anything. He just walked by and saw something on my computer, and because he's always attached to screens, he looked and went, "That's what my work looks like." He said, "You're working like a developer now." And I'm like, "That's cool, so fun."
And so then no more discounting what we do. We're developing, we're coding, let's value who we are and what our brains are capable of. It's important work.
Yeah. Julie Robinson called it soft architecture. And I think that's what really got it in my head, that this is building something. That is what you're doing. And that's a big deal. So
we need more reminders like that. I mean, just generally, as people working in this industry, maybe because of history and how it's been framed for us, but we do devalue our work, not just other people doing it, but we do it to ourselves. And these are really good reminders. Thank you.
So, I'm looking for the question. I don't see it. Did you delete it, Christina?
Well, she already talked about her grading genius secrets, so I didn't.
Well, I want to hear more though. How do you work with your husband how do you guys team up to make? You are the designer, he's the grader. How do you make that work?
So it is a little tricky because we are married. So there is that, like, there's stuff you got to navigate there. But how essentially it's working now that we've gotten it down, because again, I'm new. So I believe I'm currently working on my 4th garment design as we speak. None of them are published yet, to be clear. Like, I'm still getting used to the pipeline of making sure, like, when you finish this, then you start this next project. And when you hit there, you get into this project. So what I'll do, I'll get my big idea and I'll sketch it out. And then I will think about a lot of the actual design aspects. So I'll think about, what do I want the fit to be? I'll think about ease. I'll think about tolerance, and I'll think about certain fit points that these are not negotiable. So if it doesn't fit here, it's not going to get made. Stuff like that. And I will generally work out my own size, and then I will go to Dan. And Dan is the one who, for example, this is a compound raglan. And so it's sitting a little funny because I'm sitting down, but it's a compound raglan. And he figured out the rate of increasing for me and my size. And then what he would do is go across all of the sizes, and he would take the grade rules that I created, the size chart that I gave him, and then he just applies it to everything else. And with that application will come, the increase rates for the raglan. I can do that, but one size takes me about 4 hours. Yeah. It takes me about 30 minutes. So it's intense how quickly he can do this kind of work, because he is a math genius.
What a gift.
Yeah, it really is. And so we'll do that. And then I will knit up my sample, and then I will write the pattern. So I get essentially the whole pattern structure is in, the instructions are written, and I will highlight and I will at him. We do it through Google Docs. That's how I do my editing. And so I will tag him, and he will go in and he will insert the numbers. And for a lot of people that might seem like, really, you can't even put your own numbers in, I'm so bad at numbers, it's inexplicable. And I want to
Yeah.
make sure that testers are getting, well, not just testers. I want to make sure I'm not handing my tech editor, a dog's breakfast, and that it makes sense and it's not more work for her. And so the person who is the best at numbers is the one who puts them in, and that's my husband. So I'll write the whole thing and I'll put in the parentheses and I'll just put like XYZ and I'll highlight it and tag him, and he goes in and fills it in. And then he will take a quick pass over the pattern to make sure it makes sense. My husband does not knit. So he, anything that makes no sense to him, he highlights and he will put, this might be a knitting thing or it might be a, instruction thing. So take a look at this. And so that's how we work together. But again, I am incredibly privileged to have someone like that in my house, and someone like that who is so willing to help me. Like I can't even begin to express. Dr. Common Thread is definitely a huge part of why I'm able to do what I do. And I'm incredibly privileged with that, because even if you do have a partner who could do that, that doesn't mean that they will. And so I'm very lucky to have him. And that's mostly how we work together. Every so often he'll get out of his lane, and so he'll be like, wouldn't it look better like this? And I'm like, no, I don't come to you and say, shouldn't you add 5 here? Don't you tell me to move a design feature. Every so often we have to have a scoot back in your lane chat, but it's not very often. And I know he means well, so it's fine.
But I love that you know what your weakness is and you don't try to make it a strength. Like you go ahead and you tap into the person who has that strength, and you guys are able to work together. That's really beautiful.
Yeah. Well, and that's a lot of what a partnership is, right? Is tasking who's best at what to give the best result to the partnership. So
yeah. And I think a lot of people that I've met in this industry seem to think that if you can't do it all alone, you can't do it. And my mind is boggled by that. Yeah, I don't understand. I'll never forget somebody. I was lamenting how terrible I am at math, and I was personalizing it. So I'm not intelligent because I'm bad at math. And somebody asked me, and I said, I could get better at math. I know I can work harder at it and I can get better at it. And they said, but what if you don't? They said, what if you're bad at math? What's the big deal? Then you're just bad at math. Like, go find someone who isn't. And guess what? The person who's really good at math is probably not nearly as good at talking to people as you are. So they're both skills. And I'll never forget, I asked my husband, why do you think that you got, your promotion? And he said, because of how I talk to people and how I manage people. He said, there are plenty of people who are just as good at coding and just as good at math as I am. He said, but it's how I've learned to work with people and manage people. And that's why I think I'm getting promoted so much. And I kind of just looked at him and he said, yes, I know. It means because of you. I'm like, thank you. So, we each have our strengths, and working with other people who have strengths that we don't, not only accepts us for who we are, but it lets them be really good at what they do, and it lets them shine too. So,
and just as a comment to everyone else watching, you may not have a partner that can do the grading if you can't grade something like this, but that's what tech editors also do. Don't be afraid to reach out into your community wherever you are, or even in the Tech Tip Talk community. And we'll help you find the person to meet that, so that you can work in your genius zone and you can have people on your team that are in their genius zone. That's what this is all about. It's community.
There are a lot of ways. There are a lot of different places to find that collaboration that you need. And like you both have said, I don't know where this idea came from that we have to be the entire, we have to do everything alone. And there's some sort of failing in us if we can't, wear every hat perfectly. And I think that, what you're saying is so important. We need to stop apologizing for what we don't do well, and instead like celebrate what we're great at. And it's okay to get help. And, getting, it's going to only be better for you, and you learn from each other and get a better product when you can help get collaboration that works for you. So,
absolutely.
I'm tripping over my words here. Sorry, but I think you know what I mean.
We do. So Sophie asked another question. Can we talk about money? What to think about when deciding a price? Oh boy, are we going to go pricing here? Oh, I don't know if we want to go down that money trail.
And investing, loaded question here.
A lot in money to start a business and keep it going. So let's get your thoughts on this. What do you think?
Absolutely. So the first thing that I think is that no one in this industry gets paid what they should. Everybody in this industry should get paid more than they do. This
Yeah.
this is real work, and it deserves to be recognized and it deserves to be paid. I also feel that way about any form of art. It is not valued enough. You know, the trajectory of a society can be directly correlated to how we treat our artists. And I'm just going to leave that there. So it that's where I'm coming from. So when I'm thinking about deciding a price, I want to be very, very clear with this question. I am incredibly privileged. If I made no money, my roof would still be over my head. So like I need y'all to understand that. So I have the power to sit here and say, I will not sell a shawl for less than $7, and that's on the low side. Because if I continue to undercut people when I don't need to, then that's undercutting people who shouldn't be undercut. So I'm debating selling my shawls alone for $8-9. And how I decided
How
that
about
I basically
10, 11, 12? Sorry, I'm just gonna
yeah
keep going.
yeah
I
I'm
have
always
strong feelings
thinking,
about this.
no, I agree with you, and I'm always thinking, how much can we push without a total shock to the system? And I do think so. Like there are some shawl patterns, like my King Under the Mountain shawl. That's 10 feet of cables. That's a $10 pattern. I'm selling it right now for $7. So I may go change that when we're done here. Now that I'm thinking more about it, but uh, I first went to the Fiber Business Collective and I asked designers, how do you decide, what you should charge? So that's the first thing that I thought about, was what are the people I respect doing? And the other thing that I think about is by me setting my price to what I think is fairly, it is enabling other people to do the same. I'm not a quantity over quality. I am quality is quality. And so quality deserves to be paid. So, if that is a $10 pattern, but you're selling it for $6 because you think you'll sell more for $6, sell your pattern for $10, please. Like that's my hot take. And it was also that mentality is very, very much, informed by people like Not Bad Brit talking about, you should demand what you are worth and you should demand what your value is. And when you do that, when you come up, you bring other people with you. So I absolutely want to give Brit a shout out there that her thoughts on that subject really, really get that percolating for me. But deciding on, or did I need to invest a lot of money to start this business? I will tell you exactly what happened. I will be totally straight with you. My husband took $3,000 out of the bank, stuck it in a bank account, and said, go. So that was a lot of money for me. And I did invest that. And from that $3,000, I took a course. I hired my tech editor. I have a podcast, so I got a lot of my tech equipment with that money. And again, I was very, very privileged that my husband was willing to do that. That's also how he ended up getting sucked into this business, because I'm like, you're literally an investor, bro.
Yeah, I was going to say he's a capital investor. There you go.
He really was. And I'm very lucky that way. So I may not be the best person to answer that question for everybody. But to keep it going, again, my Golden Hall shawl did very well right out the gate. So I don't think we ever at any point have had to reinvest. My memberships go a long way in keeping my business sustained, basically. So I have a membership structure for my Discord server where it's $2 to join for just the text. If you just don't like being perceived and you don't want to be on video, the $2 tier is for a lot of people. $8 is to do the video chat. And every other tier from there is basically you are acting like a Renaissance patron and you are making it so that I can be a full-time artist. And so that is basically how I keep my business going. This is the first year that I technically made a profit. It was like $30, but whatever.
Congratulations.
So yeah, it's a difficult decision to make. I was able to just quit my job, which my job was killing me. Literally, it was killing me. And it was because my husband looked across the table at me and said, I see a lot of Pippin in you right now. So from Lord of the Rings, he said Pippin was scared and afraid of being left behind, and I see that in you a lot. But I think just like Pippin, you'll find your courage too. And looked me dead in the face and went, "Quit the effing job, Nicole." And I was like, "Okay." And so I did. But not everybody is like that. So did I nurture a market? A little bit. I know we're probably running out on time, but I do want to answer that question a little bit. So what I basically did, I got on Instagram and I was sharing my healing journey essentially, which coincided with my design journey. And that's not going to be the case for a lot of people, but that is kind of how I went about doing that. It's also how I started my podcast, because I know there's a lot of people we hear from who are hobbyists. There's a lot of people we hear from who are experts. And I know for me, hearing from a peer can be very helpful too. So knitting this, I ripped it out 7 times. So telling people frogging's part of the process. Expect to frog. It's okay. Like
Rip it.
Exactly. So I started my podcast for that reason. So I had a little bit of a following, but it wasn't very much. I think I had 500 followers on Instagram, maybe 200 on YouTube when my first pattern went out. So there was a little bit of that pre-nurture, but it wasn't extensive.
Can I throw in a bonus question that we didn't give you ahead of time? I know I hate doing that, but
you're fine.
Your community and what you're offering, just showing up as yourself, is so valuable. At least that's been my perception knowing you. Do you think that it can be separate from your designing, or is it connected for you?
It's pretty freaking separate. I don't at all. It gives me the ick. It gives me such ick whenever I tell my server I have a test knit open. I don't want them to feel like they are essentially my little worker bee pool. So
Right.
I do try my very best to keep it separate. I do run my test knits on my server, but that's just because in my mind, the test knitters are doing work. Like, it is work. And although I do not yet being the key word, have the ability to pay a test knitter like they deserve to be paid, I do my best to give yarn support, but still growing. I at the very least want to give them what I think is the most valuable thing that I have to offer, which is access to my community while you're in the test knit. And if you want to stay, cool beans. If you don't, no big deal. It's no stress. This is not an Amazon subscription. You will not be automatically charged, So that's the only way that I think it's connected. I do talk to my server a lot when I'm designing, but that's like a friend talking to friends, being like, do you see that broccoli in my teeth? Like, does this look crazy? If you see something, say something. And a lot of times, like, I'll make design changes because, what I think is gonna look really cool, my friends are like, that looks ridiculous and is completely unwearable. And I'll be like, you're totally right though. And I'll go fix it. And yes, that's true. Zara's on my server. And yes, I have a design I'm working on right now called Stolen Silver Spoons. And there's about 3 people on that server being like, we know where you live. Finish it. So that's how it kind of, it melds, but it melds because I'm there. It's not because I want it to. And thank you, Alec. But yes, so it is. I keep it as separate as I can, because, like I said at the very beginning, this is not a fan club. It is not about me. I'm just here to facilitate it.
So we have like 2 minutes left, and we got 3 questions. So let's.
I know we get good questions.
We're gonna like speed trivia quiz date. Speed date.
Do it.
Ready? Here we go. When and how did your love for Lord of the Rings begin?
We got this question from a tech editor follower. So
yep. I was in junior high. It was when the movies came out. I have no shame. I found Lord of the Rings through the movies. I read The Hobbit in junior high. Absolutely loved it. Then tried to read The Lord of the Rings and be like, this is a lot of walking, and I closed it. So then when I got to high school, I did read it and was like, okay, I kind of get it. College, I read it and was like, what have I been doing with my life? And now as an adult, I read it and I am like, Lord, they stole my story. Like, so it's been a love that has grown. It started in junior high. Because
cool. You keep coming back to the same.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, as you grow and as you change as a person.
Yeah, that's the shrine. That's the Tolkien shrine right there. But for me, I saw something on the internet once that absolutely was a part of my identity, and it was not Disney that ruined my expectations for men, and it's just a photo of Aragorn, and I'm like, yep, that's true. So
Love it.
it's been there since my very formative years, and just how I interact with it has grown and changed.
Awesome.
All right. What are you excited about now?
Raglans. I won't shut up. I won't shut up about Raglans. Can't stop, won't stop. I know that variety is the spice of life, but just clothe me in Raglans and I will be a happy, happy girl. I love Raglans so much. My first 4 garment designs are going to be compound Raglans. And we're paying a lot of attention to a lot of the typical fit pain points, which I'm smack dead in the middle of my size chart. You know, I'm usually around an extra large, a 44-inch bust naturally. So I'm kind of lucky that I have, you know, a lot of the same pain points other people feel. I feel them too. So I do know how to fix them. So like you can lift your arms up in this and it's not going to be not safe for work. That's the whole goal. No rising up.
We love that.
Yeah, but that's why I won't shut up about Raglans, and they're also my favorite thing to knit. And then outside of that, it's color work and cables, because anyone who knows me will know I currently live in Florida. That's changing in a couple of weeks, and so I will get to live somewhere. Yeah, I'll get to live somewhere where it's sweater weather, and so I'll get to have cables and color work in my life again, and I'm very excited.
Awesome.
I'm going to start throwing links in here for where people can find you.
Okay,
Yeah.
so first tell us, what is your favorite knitting crochet notion?
Okay, so I am a simple woman. It's metal stitch markers. Like I could do without a lot, but if you try to hand me a plastic stitch marker, I don't know how online everybody is, but that reel that keeps popping up with the cat being like, ah! Like that's me. If you hand me a plastic stitch marker, I hate them. So my metal stitch markers are life, and swivel cords. I have to have swivel cords on my needles. There's
Which
a lot
brand do you use?
Yeah, where do you?
Yeah, I generally will use Haya. I know there's so many people probably like, but Chagu. I love Haya. They were my first brand that I used, and they had the swivel cords, and their swivel cord game was on point. And then I've started using
Needle talk.
yeah, I started using Chagus because now I know they do now have swivel cords. But when I first started knitting, if they did, I did not know.
Yeah.
But Haya is still tis peak, my lord, for swivel cord for me. And then I will also sometimes use oh my god, there are so many members on my server who are going to be like, how many times do we need to tell you how to pronounce this word? Hyggge, Hygge needle. So like as uncultured American Party of One, Hyggge, what I don't, guys, it's terrible. I've looked it up. I swear.
I don't know how to pronounce it. You're doing fine.
I don't either.
I have looked it up. I have listened to how to pronounce it because I do have some people on my server who are from Norway and Denmark, and they have literally sat down and been like, watch my mouth. And I still, uncultured American Party of One. That's all I can say. Those needles are great, and they work with a lot of Knitter's Pride cords, which are swivel. So yeah.
Yeah, Knitter's Pride has swivel cords too. All right, so tell us where people can find you online.
I am on Instagram, so I share a lot of my kind of mind work. I share on Instagram. I also share it a lot on my newsletter, which I have a landing page for my newsletter, but if you go to my website, you can sign up for it there as well. So my website's commonthreadfiber.com. And on Ko-fi, you can find me on Ko-fi as well. So I sell patterns on Ravelry, and I also sell them on Ko-fi. So for anyone who Ravelry is not accessible, my patterns are also available on Ko-fi, and that's also where you can join my server. So I'm Common Thread on Ko-fi, and I'm Nicole Larkin-York on Ravelry. And then on YouTube, I do the Thread podcast on YouTube, where if you like nerdy stuff and you haven't found me too grating and loud for you, then you should probably come hang out. This is basically what you get.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for
joining
me.
us, Nicole. It was awesome talking to you. So glad you came on.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone.
Glad. Thank you very much for being here. And everyone, go follow, join her Ko-fi and her newsletter, and let's support some new designer. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nicole. Bye. All right. Here we
I
go.
I
Okay,
just
we're
love
back.
this. Being authentically yourself. It's good.
It is. It's super important, and we
Good.
100% endorse it. Thank you all for joining us today live. We want to tell you that this broadcast would not be possible without our patron community. We have fantastic patrons who support us monetarily and help us to also pay our guests, which we feel is important. People need to be paid for their work.
And they're a great group, and they offer a lot to each other and to us. And if it's something you're curious about, check it out. We'd love to have you.
And don't forget to subscribe here to be notified whenever we are having a new broadcast. We plan on having our next broadcast will be on January 15th. We didn't update our banner. Our next broadcast is in March, and we have an excellent guest lined up, and we'd love to have you join us.
We're the third Monday of every month, and you can leave comments ahead of time. So that's, I think, is so fun. So,
and last but not least, you see it behind Christina. I don't have it in front of me because I just got a new desk. We would love if you have any questions about writing a great knitting pattern. We've written a book on it, and you can find it at our website and in the links below. Please let us know if you have any questions about creating patterns that are excellent. Thank you for
geeking out about gauge in that book too.
Oh man, and
sizing and fit.
It's so exciting, and Christina's got some live events coming up. So if you are in,
my first one is Thursday. This Thursday,
tell
I'm
us
going
about
to do
it,
a talk and
Christina.
a book signing. So I'm a little nervous, but
Tell us about it, where it is.
it's at Tide Pool Bookshop in Worcester, Mass. Yeah, Thursday at 2.
Yeah, if you are in Worcester, Massachusetts, or in the area, head on over there, and you get to see Christina in person, get your book signed, and hear a little chat about gauge, which we know we have lots of opinions about. And thanks for being here, everyone, and we'll see you next month.
Oh, thanks, guys. Compliments on my hair.
Christina got a haircut. Thanks a lot. We appreciate all of you that you are so willing to join us live. And if you want more of us, do come on over to our Patreon, because we would love to spend more time with you.
Absolutely.
Take care of yourselves.
Outro,
Bye.
Sarah.
All right, outro. Here we go.